Welcome back. Well, I'm going to shout out to Dimitri. He's a subscriber that suggested this particular video about rifle weight. In the course of doing other videos, I have sometimes addressed the issue of rifle weight, but those comments can get buried in the context of a video that has nothing to do with rifle weight, so I'll dedicate this one to that topic. It's not a complicated issue, but it's something which I can tell just by seeing a lot of the ads and a lot of the comments in different magazine writings and things like that, that it's an issue that's sometimes ignored, and it shouldn't be at all, because rifle weight is one of those things that you'll find out about it in a hurry if you're not conscious of it when you're at the shopping counter. So my first vivid memory about a rifle weight situation was I had just gone out on my first deer hunting trip, and we got out of the car. It was an old International Harvester Scout, and three of us, my dad and his good friend and me, and I had just purchased. I wasn't even 16 yet. I had just purchased my Marlin 336 in caliber 44 Magnum, which was it was an unusual gun. They only made for about I think about 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years, from the mid 60s until the early 70s, and it suffered feeding problems and stuff because the action length and the ejection port was just not sized for that cartridge, but it was a cool gun. It was the 336 Texan with the straight grip stock and all that stuff. And so I was busy, stuffing 10 rounds, I think it held, in the tube. And my dad's buddy said, "What do you think you are, Chuck Connors?" And that relates to, for those of you who are not old enough, Chuck Connors was the star of the Rifleman series. The guy that had a lever action rifle with the loop on it. It was I think it was a Model 92, probably supposed to be a 4440 or something, but it was a gun that never ejected brass. He'd fire like crazy, and levering it and shooting at the same time, and you could see there was no brass being ejected. I don't remember any brass ever being ejected. So anyway, I digress. I stuffed those 10 rounds in the tube, and I didn't get 15 feet down the trail before I realized what I had done was kind of silly, because 240 grains of lead in every one of those cases was very close to a half a pound. So I discreetly went into the woods and I shucked out a few to keep the weight manageable, because it was weight forward, very, very heavy. So that was my first recollection of weight, and the gun was otherwise quite manageable. It was lightweight. It was on the idea of this Model 94. This is my old trusty 32 Special, made in 1951. This is a nice gun to carry around in the woods all day. It's only 6.5 pounds, a little over, probably about 6.5 pounds when it's fully loaded. But it's just nice to handle, and I've talked about it before. I don't need to have a sling with this if I'm traipsing off through the woods. It's just easy to carry all day long, like a luggage handle. If I'm sitting on a stand, I'm really not that concerned about weight. If I'm just sitting there, of course, you don't need to have too many concerns when you're sitting on a stand, other than just keeping warm. But rifle weight became a very, very serious issue for me one day when my buddy and I were hunting on Carr Ridge, way up on a slope in northern New Hampshire, Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. And It's up close to the Canadian border. And speaking of that, I have a little by Canadian Molson's here. We had wandered into, we had gone over the top following a buck's trail. It was a big buck. We had gotten a glimpse of him, and he was a monster. And I would suspect he was well over 200 pounds. But he lured us. We took the bait. We followed after him, tracking him for about 2.5 hours, I think. And every now and then we'd get a glimpse of tail, or get a glimpse of antler or something like that. But we never. It was thick stuff. Well, he kept us moving into stuff that was extremely craggy. It was. We got into an area where a tornado had gone down through a few years before, and so there were broken trees laying crisscross all over the place, and pine trees, big monster pine trees, and if you can just imagine, you can't climb through that stuff. It's some of it was starting to get rotten. You can't put your foot on it without it going through. You can't. It's too high to climb over. And there's too many branches sticking down to go under it. It was a real problem. We were kind of getting concerned that we might not get out of there. Fortunately, we found a way to slide kind of sideways, and we got into some hardwoods, and we were able to just get right out after some doing. But we were stuck there for a while. But the thing that I remember more than anything else was the weight of my Model 700 3006 that I was carrying around. I'll tell you what, I was really getting concerned about that gun. It was very ungainly. I had a beautiful leather Cobra sling on it. One of those things with the little cartridge carrier on it, with a snap and all that stuff. I mean, this gun was tricked out. I had mounted a thick Packmeyer pad on that thing. That pad probably weighed more than the walnut that I sawed off. Because I used to shoot some heavy loads with that. I was shooting 165 grain loads, doing at that time 3,000 feet per second with H205 powder that was around then. It was a very, very, talk about superformance. I mean, Hornady does that now with their superformance loads. I was doing that then with that H205 powder, which has long been taken off the market. There were issues with it. But it was a heavy gun. All told, the gun probably weighed over 9 pounds. And slogging through that junk, trying to climb up over things and crawl under things, trying to get out of there with that big long barrel, I was getting very, very tired of that gun very quickly, and I wished I had had something a little bit more manageable to climb around with. I would have given my eye teeth for that 32 Special then. So that was the first time that I really had a material issue with a gun that was too heavy. Since then, I've gravitated more towards this sort of a bolt action. When I go afield with a bolt action, I don't always. Sometimes I take a lever with me, or I take something on that idea a little lighter. But if I'm taking a bolt now, I tend to go towards the weight of a 7. I like to get about a 7-pound rifle, which is about what this one here. This is my 257 Roberts, and special edition, and it's a Winchester featherweight Model 70, and with that scope on it, that's a Leupold 2-to-7 scope, and with that scope on it, and with the sling, it weighs without ammo, it weighs just 8 pounds. So I can manage that. 8 pounds is something I can deal with. It's got a 22-inch barrel, and it's it feels light to me, because I'm a person that carries around 220 pounds. So to me, that's not a heavy rifle. I know people who have picked that up and say, "Well, that's a little heavy for me." So that's the thing that is always more of a personal decision than anything else. Is a matter of, how does the gun feel to you? Let's talk about some of the ways that gun weight can be reduced, and also regard it, for what it is. It can put you on the horns of a dilemma. Too light a weight gun has oftentimes disappointed people, because the first time they start shooting it, they realize that thing really slams them. And regardless of the weight mitigation issues that you can address, you can put in buffers in the stock, maybe to reduce the weight, if the felt recoil and things like that. That's all well and good, but sometimes just trimming down a rifle too much for its caliber, for the bore size, can get you into trouble and make it uncomfortable to shoot. And when it's uncomfortable to shoot, you're not going to want to practice with it. And that's key to becoming proficient in the field, is to know how your gun shoots and to be able to handle it effectively on the range. When you go to the sand pit or whatever and practice shooting, you want to know that you can handle that gun on a easily, without any issues. And you can always get a past recoil pad and things like that to put under your shirt, and that will reduce recoil for when you're practicing. But that also increases your length of pull, sometimes to a unmanageable level if a person of shorter stature. But let's talk about some of the issues that you have to always consider. And I'm not promoting that you get a lightweight gun. I'm not promoting any weight gun whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, if you feel like you want to carry around 10 pounds of rifle weight, that's perfectly all right with me. It's your gun. But I'm going to just simply discuss some of the things that go on in the industry and the realities. First and foremost is considering the caliber. Standard calibers will typically come with shorter barrels, at least 2 to 4 inches shorter than most Magnum calibers. Magnums will run 24 to 26, and standards will run anywhere from 20 to 22, sometimes 24. But typically for a given gun, the Magnum's always going to add another 2 inches typically. And barrel weight, especially when it's out forward, it's not only the additional, maybe 5 or 6 ounces of additional barrel weight, but because it's out where it is, that adds a little bit of extra apparent weight. And it also means that as you're carrying it, even with a sling, it's catching things up above and stuff. So that's one of the things to consider, and that's why I particularly prefer standard cartridges, like in the nothing larger than 30-06 size case, because that way there, I don't have to be concerned about bruising impact. Along with the other issues that Magnums, as I've discussed many times, excessive meat destruction and things. Pair your cartridge to what you're going to be shooting, and I've talked about that in other videos. But that's one of the considerations. Is first of all whether you're getting a standard size cartridge or a Magnum. The other thing that can pair off of a few ounces, and it's not a lot. 3 or 4 ounces, I think, is about as much as it's going to take off, as if you go from a long action to a shorter action. So a cartridge which is a 308 size action is going to be a little bit lighter than a cartridge that requires a 30-06 size action. Those are the standard weight issues in any given rifle. Next down the list comes the stock design. Now, I want to be very clear here. Just because a stock is walnut does not necessarily mean it's heavy. Walnut is actually, it's a dense wood, but it's not that heavy. Some woods are extremely heavy. Maple can be a little bit heavier than walnut, and while they're pretty, they can be a little heavier. Laminate stocks are very heavy. Laminate stocks are very popular, and they're pretty, but they can be very heavy. You're talking about a stock which has been compressed with resins that basically is a piece of plywood. So those are very heavy. Synthetic stocks they run the gamut. There's featherweight, really lightweight, synthetic stocks such as the Ruger American has, which is basically it's a shell. It's a hollow shell with very, very little material in it, and it's well supported. My wife's Ruger American Compact shoots beautifully accurate, 3/8 inch groups just consistently, or 243. So you can have very effective lightweight synthetic stocks, and as I say, they run the gamut. I've owned some synthetic stocks that are exceptionally heavy, far heavier than anything else. They're filled with resins. They have aluminum pillar block systems in them. All sorts of things that drive the weight up. So don't just immediately think that because it's a black stock that it's a lightweight stock. And do a little bit of investigation and look at the actual weight figures. So while they can have some advantage in terms of bedding qualities and stuff, I'm not sure whether it certainly can't add any more accuracy than what my wife gets with her, what some people would call a flimsy Ruger American stock. Flimsy though it is, it shoots like crazy. It shoots like dynamite. So, the engineering of a stock is much like the engineering of a bridge or something. It's a matter of support, not necessarily a matter of weight. Barrel diameter is a important consideration. That's why I like that featherweight barrel, is because it's a slender barrel, and I addressed the barrel weight issue with regard to accuracy in a video that I did some couple of years ago, shooting my 250 that same gun, shooting that rifle with at the range, and stunning accuracy. I'm not claiming that gun has got varmint grade accuracy, although you watch that video and you might come to a conclusion that's different. But it's certainly more than enough accuracy for any large game that I would be hunting a field, or for that matter, if I stuff 75 grain bullets in that and go varmint shooting, long range varmint shooting with that. The accuracy is down to very, very, very sweet, tiny groups. I've had many 4 and 5 shot one hole groups with that gun shooting 75 grain bullets. So don't ever discount lightweight barrels. Please do not discount lightweight barrels and think you got to get a heavy barrel in order to have an accurate rifle. And don't fall for the gag that as I mentioned in that video, don't fall for the gag that you have to have a, what amounts to a police sniper rifle in order to go out hunting. I get such a kick out of these ads that show somebody going afield with a, I can tell it's a 24 to 26 inch barrel, and he's got a cartridge in it that's larger than what's left of my cigar here. And he's heading off into the high timbers of, I don't know where, the Bitterroot Mountains or something. You have to imagine. It's very romantic, and he's gonna, no question, he's gonna come back with a huge Cirrus moose or something. So these are all fantasies. You got to carry around that junk, and getting it up and down those mountains, on your back, is not the romantic venture that you might think it is when you're seeing in a full color spread in a magazine. The reality is that gun's not gonna shoot your elk any deader, and it's not gonna shoot them any farther, and it's not gonna shoot them any more accurately than a lightweight rifle. So be conscious of that fact. Keep your cartridges and your gun pared down to what is reasonable for the conditions that you're going to be hunting and where you're going to be shooting, and within the ethical ranges that you're going to be hunting. Now, what about certain lightweight features that you might find on a rifle? For instance, the perforations of bolts and things like that. You can see guns where the bolts have been perforated, with say 1/4-inch holes or whatever they drill. You're paying a lot of money for that, and I'm not sure whether steel is dense, but it's not so dense that taking 5 or 6 holes that are 1/4-inch in size and drilling them out, it doesn't amount to that much, because when it comes right down to it, the amount of steel that's being taken out, you can take a 1/4-inch drill out of a drill box and section it off into the number of pieces that you would have drilled out of a bolt. How much does that piece of drill weigh? That 1/4-inch drill weigh? It doesn't weigh really that much at all. So I think that's a little bit of a mind game, that it looks light, so therefore it is. Well, it's not going to do that much. And perforating a alloy trigger guard that only weighs less than an ounce to begin with, to perforate it down to a fraction less than that is not something which I think is it's not meaningful. Reducing the diameter of receivers is something that's a trick that's done by, for instance, Kimber does that. They're lovely guns. Kimber makes wonderful guns. It's one of the last companies, it's probably the last company that makes 257 Roberts on a regular basis. Now, see, this is why George Burns used to always smoke cheap cigars when he was on stage, because this is a Romeo and Julieta, and you can't keep a good cigar going. If it's a good cigar and it's good and fresh, it's going to go out on you unless you're smoking it. So if I can get my old Zippo going, this Zippo I had. I had this Zippo. I bought it in Vietnam at the PX, and it's been refurbished by Zippo. It was hand engraved with my name on it, and I believe it or not, it fell out of my pocket when I was riding my M151A1 Jeep through Cu Chi one day, and because we had patch pockets, we didn't have pockets, that had, I don't know what you call them, hanging pockets inside. So it just drifted out of my pants and out of my fatigues, ended up on the highway, and I didn't have it for well over 4 or 5 weeks until there was a woman in town that hailed my Jeep down when I was going through town one day, and it turned out a couple of the kids in town had found her on the road, and she recognized my name, and so she gave it back to me. So it's kind of a real cool keepsake. So I've been using it ever since, and of course in those days I was smoking cigarettes, which I'm glad I quit. But so I was a little bit. It's had new guts put in it, and new hinge and all that stuff, but for free. So anyway, so I digress. Lowering the weight of a gun is, I think, an important consideration, but I don't think it's something which you should obsess about. You can reduce the weight of a gun by just simply buying a lightweight version of a standard rifle. Keeping the cartridge size down so you don't have to have that extra long barrel unless you really think you need it. And keeping the other accessories down, namely the scope mounts. This one here has got. I just love steel mounts. I just love they're blued. They're blued and they match the rifle. These are the classic old loophole STD, means standard. That's how they got that name. The Ruger STD mounts. They're the two-piece mounts, so they're not quite as heavy as the one-piece rig, and they're the steel rings, so they are heavier. I could have gotten aluminum alloy bases and rings, and it probably would have saved me an ounce and a half or more, I suppose. And the other thing, but I just happen to like the steel. It complements the gun. The other thing, and I've mentioned it in my sling video, these slings here. This is a cotton Garand sling. Very, very lightweight, very effective. I can also use it as a shooter's sling, as I described in that video, and I recommend that you watch that video. I consider this to be the very best sling that was ever designed for the hunting rifle. It goes into a very quick, hasty sling. I can also adjust it into a loop sling, as I'll describe in that video for you to see if it's properly set up. Lightweight, no matter, even if it gets wet, it still stays light. It's a lot lighter than leather, and it's a good way to go. And plus, they're cheap. When I bought this one, I think it was about $14.95. I still see them. If you're a CMP member, you can get them for about, I think they're about $10.50 if you're a CMP member. Otherwise, they're about $19.95. But they're very, very light, and those will help keep the weight down rather than having a heavy Cobra sling with a cartridge box on the sewed on it with a snap and all that. Those are pretty, but they're not very effective. But that's about all I have to say. And also too, and this goes along with my recommendations on scope power. Buying a rifle and putting a scope on it of modest magnification will keep your weight down. That's one way to keep the weight down by a good 3/4 pound or more. I see too many scopes being sold to people who unwittingly are buying far too much power than they'll ever be able to use. When you buy power that starts out at 3 or 4 at the bottom end, and you're going into the woods, you have no field of view whatsoever, and you don't need to have 14, 15 power to shoot anything at 300 or even 400 yards. You simply don't need to have anything more than 7 power for that sort of distance. I've done an awful lot of shooting with a 5 power scope, a 1 to 5 power scope, 1.5 to 5, I guess. And 5 power, you'd be surprised how many hundreds of yards you can shoot with a 5 power scope on game. It's not an issue whatsoever. So that's one way you can really keep the weight down on a rifle, is not the rifle itself, is by the hardware you put on top of it. So that's about it. Benny, he's over there. He's sleeping on his deck. He's getting older, so he just likes to sack out and sleep whenever he can. So, but he's doing well. His health is good, and thanks be to God. All the prayers that we've gotten. It's starting to cool down now. It's this is the sun just went over the mountains over here to the west. So it's definitely gotten cooler by probably about 5 to 8 degrees in just the last couple of minutes that I've been sitting here. So I'm going to call it a day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell there so that you can get advised about future videos. And God bless.